Now we're going to take a deeper look at our robots animator. We're going to hook up the duck, make sure that it works properly, and figure out how to make that work with our character's collider, movement, and everything else. So let's take a look at our animator. Here I've got my robot selected, and I've got the base object underneath it with the robot controller on it. And here I've got my robot controller opened up. So we double click on the controller and double click on the actual character controller right there. Pops open this controller on the bottom. I'm going to go select the base. I'm going to press play real quick and just watch it in debug mode for a moment. See that I can go between my states again. So I've got my idle state here and I go into the run state when I start running. If I jump, I go into that jump state, my blocks start to fall down. And if I want to duck, right now I don't have any way to do that other than going to parameters and choosing the duck option. Remember, I can hit fire and that should work when I'm ducking or when I'm standing. It's not shooting off a projectile because I'm just clicking the button on the animator. And if I stand up and click it, you'll see that it does that same animation. Now let's go take a look at the layers again. Remember, we've got a mobility layer. That's what we're seeing right here. This is the default layer. It's just what it's named. It's called mobility because it's handling the movement. It could also be called locomotion, movement, or just about anything else. A lot of times it's just called layer. We've got this layer though that handles our moving, jumping, and ducking, and then we've got the other layer here for our shooting. And then finally we have this hit layer that we're not going to hook up yet, but eventually we're going to cut it and move it over to our mobility layer. So what I'd like to do now is make our duck work, and then I'd like to make it so that we can do a couple other transitions that don't exist yet. So right now our duck works by transitioning from idle into duck when the duck condition is true. That's our parameter right here. When this gets set to true, goes into duck, and then when it's set to false, it goes out of duck. If I'm running, it also gets set to true. Let's see, if I run and I stop, you see that it went in from duck or from run into duck. And if I try to get out, it should, well, it's not going to go straight into running because I'm not holding down the controller and clicking at the same time because it knocks me out of focus in the window. So let's now hook up our duck. To do that, we're going to need to set this duck parameter in our code. To do that, we'll open up our player. I'll go to my player and find the player script. We'll open that up, and inside of our update, we're going to start reading our vertical input as well as our horizontal input. On line 80, we read the horizontal input by reading the action move and getting its vector 2, which is our X and Y, or our horizontal and vertical. And I want to get the vertical part from it as well. So I'm going to duplicate line 80 and change this X to a Y. Now, personally, first I'll change this to vertical. And then I'm going to say that personally, I don't really like doing it exactly this way because now we're reading that action twice just to get the X and Y value. And I'd rather just take this line right here, or this bit of code on line 80, the part where we get the vector 2, cut it with an X, and call this, let's just call this input with a lowercase I. I'll say var input up above equals, and then paste. And then on line 82, I'll put input.y. So now I've got a horizontal input and a vertical input. I'm going to copy my vertical input and I'm going to go down to the part, I think right around here where I set the horizontal and I had it commented. So right after my acceleration, I'll add 2 lines and I'm going to say underscore animator dot set bool, and we're going to set that duck bool. So say duck. And we're gonna, or is it duck or ducking? Let's go double check that I've typed the same name. It is named duck. Just want to double, triple check to make sure that I get it right. So we're gonna call it duck, and then we're gonna pass in true if the horizontal value is not a negative one, or the vertical value is not negative. So if we're not pressing down, we'll pass in true, and we'll pass in false if we are pressing downward or trying to get a negative value. So I'll say underscore vertical. Or no, there's no underscore, it's just vertical input. There we go. Less than, vertical input. Gotta get these. There we go. Got my autocorrect right. It's less than 0. So if our vertical input is less than 0, then we will set the duck parameter on our animator, which should cause our player to duck. Let's save, go into Unity and press play and see if our player now ducks when we push down. All right, here we are, and I push down, and you can see he goes into duck mode. Let go, and he goes back into up or standing, and if I run and duck, he goes into duck mode and kind of slides around, and then goes back into run as soon as I let go. All right, that's kind of good, but I don't want my character sliding around like that when he's ducking. I want him to kind of stop moving as soon as I start actually ducking down. So let's go into our player script again, and let's add another line of code here so that we don't move if our vertical input is less than 0, or so that our desired horizontal becomes 0 if we're pressing down, so that we kind of stop moving left and right. So to do that, I'm just going to add a new line, and it'll say if vertical input is less than 0, then desired horizontal is equal to 0. So this should stop us from moving sideways, or stop us from having an input sideways if we're pressing downwards. Let's go try that out. We should be able to get in here and run around back and forth. Yep, and then I hit down, and now I'm instantly stopped. Run over here, hit down, and I'm instantly stopped. Now, there is one issue with this. We're going to address this in a moment, but try jumping and then pushing down. Look at that. Our jump stops in the middle. We don't keep getting that arc. We're not actually finishing our jump. We just start dropping down instantly. Now, that might be a setup that you want. Maybe you want it that you push down and you instantly stomp down like a Kirby or something, but that's not the effect that I want. So we're going to need to address that. But before we do, we should check in our changes because we've got quite a bit here, and then we'll continue on and fix it in the next section. So say we've added duck input to the player. Oh, there, get rid of that extra space and check in our changes.